The bridge of the celestial dominion hummed with the familiar symphony of advanced technology, a sound that had become as natural to Commander Liara Vex as her own heartbeat. Her elongated ears, curved like delicate silver crescents, twitched slightly as she detected a subtle discordance in the ship's harmonic frequency. 27 years of service aboard Zephyrian vessels had taught her to listen for such irregularities, though this particular anomaly seemed almost too faint to matter. "Commander," called Sub-Lieutenant Kale from his station, his voice carrying that particular tone of controlled concern that all good officers mastered. "The quantum flux readings are showing minor fluctuations in the primary fusion chamber." Liara turned toward him, her boots making no sound on the polished deck plating. The bridge around them gleamed with the characteristic blue-white luminescence of Zephyrian technology, every surface smooth and purposeful, every display showing optimal readings across the board. Well, mostly optimal. Define minor, Sub-Lieutenant. She moved to stand behind his chair, watching the cascading data streams that would have overwhelmed most species, but were perfectly comprehensible to Zephyrian minds trained from childhood in multidimensional mathematics. 0.007% variance from baseline parameters, Kale reported, his fingers dancing across the control interface with practiced precision. Well within acceptable tolerances, but the pattern suggests. A soft chime echoed through the bridge, followed by the measured voice of the ship's AI. "Attention bridge crew, minor recalibration of quantum fusion core parameters is in progress. Estimated completion. 14 minutes, 37 seconds. Liara nodded, her expression relaxing. The celestial dominion had been running flawlessly for 843 standard days without requiring anything more than routine maintenance. Their technology was simply too advanced for serious problems to occur. The Zephyrian Armada had maintained galactic peace for over 2 millennia through the simple expedient of possessing equipment that never failed when it mattered. "Probably just another ghost echo from that pulsar we passed last week," suggested Lieutenant Commander Thon from the tactical station, his tone carrying a hint of amusement. "You know how sensitive our system are to exotic radiation signatures." "Exotic radiation," muttered Communications Officer Vera, her ears drooping slightly in mock despair. "Last month it was dark matter fluctuations. The month before that, gravitational wave interference. I swear our sensors are becoming hypochondriacs." A ripple of quiet laughter passed through the bridge crew. Even on a vessel designed for warfare, the Zephyrians had never quite lost their appreciation for gentle humor, though they kept it appropriately subdued in the presence of senior officers. The laughter died as every display on the bridge suddenly flickered red. "That's not normal," Kale said, stating what was rapidly becoming obvious to everyone present. His usually steady hands were now moving frantically across his controls. "Commander, the variance just jumped to 12% and climbing." 12%. Liara's voice remained calm, but her ears had snapped to full attention. In 8 centuries of service, no Zephyrian fusion core had ever deviated from baseline parameters by more than 3%. "Run a full diagnostic on all monitoring systems." "Already in progress," replied Chief Engineer Dorn from his position near the rear of the bridge. His usually immaculate uniform was now showing the first signs of perspiration. "Commander, our diagnostics are coming back clean. The monitoring systems are functioning perfectly. It's the core itself that's." Another chime, this one distinctly more urgent than the last. "Attention bridge crew. Quantum fusion core variance now exceeds safe operational parameters. Automatic stabilization protocols are experiencing difficulty." The AI's voice carried an unusual hesitation that sent a chill through Liara's spine. Zephyrian AIs didn't experience difficulty. They calculated solutions faster than organic minds could even formulate problems. The fact that their ship's artificial intelligence was essentially admitting confusion was roughly equivalent to the laws of physics apologizing for an inconvenience. Difficulty? Liara repeated, her command training keeping her voice level. Clarify the nature of this difficulty. A pause that lasted exactly 37 seconds, an eternity for an AI capable of processing terabytes of data in microseconds. The quantum fusion reaction is exhibiting patterns that do not correspond to any known theoretical framework. Standard stabilization algorithms are proving inadequate. Thon looked up from his displays, his expression shifting from mild concern to something approaching alarm. Commander, if I didn't know better, I'd say our fusion core is improvising. Fusion cores don't improvise, Vera stated flatly. They follow the laws of quantum mechanics. Those laws are not subject to creative interpretation. Perhaps someone should inform our fusion core of that fact, Kale suggested dryly, then immediately looked apologetic for the attempt at humor during what was rapidly becoming a crisis situation. Liara moved to the central command station, her mind racing through possibilities. The Celestial Dominion represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian engineering, incorporating technology refined over millennia. Every component had been tested beyond any conceivable failure scenario. The mathematical principles underlying their fusion technology were so well understood that the engineering manuals contained more precision than most species could comprehend. Chief Dorn, she called, what's the current rate of variance increase? Accelerating, Commander. We're now at 18% and the curve is becoming exponential. His ears had flattened against his head, an involuntary stress response that he seemed unaware of. At this rate, we'll reach critical instability within 6 hours. Recommendations? I honestly don't have any, Commander. The admission seemed to pain him physically. Our best theoretical models suggest this situation is impossible. The safety systems alone should have prevented any variance beyond 5%, and the automated correction protocols should have resolved the issue within minutes. The bridge fell silent, except for the increasingly discordant hum of the ship's systems. Liara could feel the weight of command settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. 3,000 crew members depended on her decisions, and for the first time in her career, she was facing a problem that Zephyrian science couldn't immediately solve. Ma'am, Kale's voice broke the silence. Captain Sarah Martinez was in the middle of explaining to her chief engineer why coffee stains on quantum resonance readings were actually a good thing when the emergency communication array started making sounds like a dying whale with hiccups. Well, that's new, she muttered, abandoning her coffee-stained reports to investigate the source of the cosmic distress call. The bridge of the resourceful wanderer looked like an electronics graveyard had mated with a particularly optimistic junkyard, producing offspring that somehow managed to keep 17 different species technologies working in harmony through sheer bloody-mindedness and liberal applications of electrical tape. Captain, called Tommy Rodriguez from beneath the communications console, where he was apparently performing surgery on something that sparked every few seconds. You're going to want to hear this, and maybe sit down first. Sarah remained standing on principle. Hit me, Tommy. We just received a distress signal from the Zephyrian flagship, Celestial Dominion. You know, the ship that could probably vaporize our entire solar system if it sneezed wrong. They're asking for our help. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle humming of machinery that probably shouldn't have been humming, and the occasional pop from Tommy's electrical work. Sarah blinked slowly, processing this information with the same care she might use to defuse a particularly temperamental antimatter warhead. I'm sorry, did you just say the most advanced military vessel in the galaxy is calling us for tech support? That's exactly what I said, Captain. Tommy's voice carried a note of barely suppressed glee. Their quantum fusion core is having what they describe as an unprecedented cascade failure. Apparently their AI is confused, which is like saying the laws of physics are having second thoughts. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her research station, where she'd been cataloging samples of space fungus that had been growing increasingly philosophical lately. "Captain, the Zephyrians have technology that makes our best equipment look like stone knives and bearskins. If they're asking us for help, the situation must be genuinely impossible." Or, suggested Navigation Officer Ben Chen, with a grin that belonged on someone about to pull off the universe's greatest practical joke. "They've finally discovered that sometimes the best solution is the dumbest one." Sarah felt her own grin beginning to form. The resourceful wanderer had earned its reputation throughout the sector as the ship you called when the problem was too weird, too dangerous, or too stupid for anyone else to touch. They specialized in impossible repairs, theoretical engineering, and what the Galactic Engineering Council politely termed aggressive problem-solving methodologies. "Tommy, can you patch me through to their commander?" "Already working on it, Captain. Fair warning, though, Zephyrian communication protocols make tax forms look like children's picture books. Give me about 3 minutes to convince their systems that we're not a cosmic prank call." While Tommy worked his peculiar magic on the communications array, Sarah considered their options. The crew of the Wanderer consisted of 12 humans, 3 AIs of questionable sanity, 1 sentient coffee machine that had achieved consciousness during a particularly creative repair job, and approximately 47 different pieces of equipment that shouldn't have worked, but did anyway through pure stubbornness. "Elena, what do we know about Zephyrian fusion technology?" Dr. Vasquez consulted her datapad, which was held together with what appeared to be prayer and possibly some kind of adhesive made from space moss. "Theoretically perfect quantum-controlled fusion reactions maintained by AI systems more sophisticated than most planetary governments. They achieve energy output that would make our fusion plants look like birthday candles, with waste heat so minimal it's practically non-existent." "In other words," Ben added cheerfully, "it's so advanced that it's probably forgotten how to brake properly." "Got them, Captain." Tommy's voice carried a note of triumph, "patching you through to Commander Liara Vex and Sarah. Try not to mention the time we fixed that Centaurian dreadnought with bubble gum and sheer optimism." The main display flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship in all its gleaming perfection. Sarah had seen pictures of Zephyrian ships before, but experiencing the reality was something else entirely. Everything was smooth, efficient, and so precisely engineered that it made her slightly uncomfortable. It was like looking at a museum exhibit titled, "What Technology Looks Like When You Don't Have to Make Do with Spare Parts." Commander Liara Vex appeared on screen, her elegant features composed in the kind of calm that suggested either complete confidence or complete terror. Her distinctive elongated ears, curved like delicate works of art, twitched slightly as she took in the chaotic background of the human ship. "Captain Martinez," Liara began, her voice carrying the crisp precision of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question, "I must admit this is an unusual situation for us." "Commander," Sarah replied, settling into her captain's chair with the casual confidence of someone who'd never met a problem she couldn't either fix or make significantly more interesting. "Unusual situations are pretty much our specialty. What can we do for you? Our quantum fusion core is experiencing failures that our best engineers cannot explain or correct. The variance from normal parameters continues to increase exponentially, and our AI systems report that the reaction patterns do not conform to known physics." Tommy's voice carried clearly across the bridge. "Did she just say their fusion core is ignoring physics? Because if it is, I want to shake its hand and buy it a drink." Sarah shot him a look that suggested he save the commentary for later. "Commander, the docking bay of the Celestial Dominion was a marvel of engineering precision that made Tommy Rodriguez whistle appreciatively as the human team disembarked from their shuttle. Everything gleamed with that particular Zephyrian aesthetic that suggested the entire ship had been designed by perfectionist mathematicians with unlimited budgets and possibly mild obsessive-compulsive disorders. Sweet, merciful neutrons, Tommy breathed, hefting his toolkit with the reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. This place is so clean I could eat off the deck plating. Hell, I could perform surgery off the deck plating. Please don't, Dr. Vasquez muttered, adjusting her scanner array and trying not to gawk at the seamless integration of technology that surrounded them. We're here to fix their fusion core, not traumatize their maintenance staff. Commander Liara Vex approached their group with the measured stride of someone, attempting to project confidence, while internally questioning every decision that had led to this moment. Her elongated ears were held at attention, though Sarah noticed they twitched slightly when Tommy accidentally dropped his wrench, and the sound echoed through the pristine bay like a gunshot in a library. "Captain Martinez," Liara began, "welcome aboard the Celestial Dominion. I must warn you that the situation has deteriorated since our last communication. The core variance is now at 37% and climbing." Ben Chen looked up from his portable scanner, which was making sounds like a confused cricket having an argument with a digital watch. 37%. Commander, with all due respect, how is your ship still in one piece? An excellent question, replied Chief Engineer Dorn, who had materialized beside Liara with the kind of silent efficiency that made humans nervous. Our safety protocols should have initiated emergency shutdown at 20% variance. They appear to be as confused as the rest of our systems. Tommy's face lit up with the expression of someone who'd just been handed the universe's most interesting puzzle. Your safety systems are confused. Oh, this is going to be fun. Elena, remember that time the research station's AI started having philosophical debates with the life support computer? Different problem, Doctor. Vasquez replied automatically, already absorbed in her readings. That was existential uncertainty. This looks more like computational rebellion. Liara's ears flattened slightly. Rebellion. It's a technical term, Sarah assured her quickly. Sort of. Tommy, what are you seeing? Tommy had already opened his toolkit and was assembling something that looked like it might have been designed by someone with a loose understanding of engineering principles and a firm belief that if you couldn't fix it with tools, you weren't using enough tools. Captain, I'm detecting resonance patterns that are definitely not in any manual I've ever read. Your fusion core isn't just malfunctioning, Commander. It's improvising. Fusion cores do not improvise, stated Sub-Lieutenant Kale, who had joined their group with the air of someone hoping to learn something while secretly fearing what he might discover. This one does, Tommy replied cheerfully. And from what I can tell, it's gotten pretty good at it. Elena, are you picking up the harmonic variations in the quantum field matrix? Doctor, Vasquez consulted her instruments, which were held together with what appeared to be optimism, and possibly some kind of advanced polymer that had been invented by accident. The patterns are definitely non-standard. It's almost like the core is trying to find a better way to do fusion than the way it was programmed to do fusion. That's impossible, Dorn said flatly. The programming represents millennia of theoretical refinement. There is no better way. Ben looked up from his scanner with a grin that suggested he just heard something delightfully absurd. Chief, no offense, but that's exactly what every engineer says right before someone finds a better way to do things, usually involving methods that make traditionalists need sedatives. As they made their way through the corridors toward the engineering section, Sarah couldn't help but notice how their footsteps echoed differently than they should have. The ship's artificial gravity was fluctuating in subtle ways that created interesting effects, like the way Tommy's wrench seemed to hover for just a moment too long when he tossed it from hand to hand. Commander, Sarah said carefully, are you experiencing any other unusual effects from the core instability? Define unusual, Liara replied, just as they passed a section where 3 crew members were walking on the ceiling. apparently having a perfectly normal conversation about duty schedules while completely ignoring the fact that they were defying gravity. Well, that would qualify, Ben observed, craning his neck to watch the ceiling walkers disappear around a corner. Gravitational field fluctuations. Your fusion core isn't just improvising, it's redecorating reality. Tommy stopped abruptly, his face taking on the expression of someone who just connected several important dots. Wait a minute. Elena, what did you say about the quantum field variations? Non-standard harmonic patterns with increasing complexity over time. And the gravity fluctuations are getting more creative, not more chaotic. Tommy's voice carried the excitement of a detective who just solved a particularly elegant murder mystery. Commander, I don't think your fusion core is malfunctioning. I think it's evolving. The corridor fell silent except for the ship's ambient hum, which now that Sarah listened carefully, did sound distinctly more musical than when they'd first come aboard. Evolving, Liara repeated slowly, her ears tilting at angles that suggested she was processing concepts that her training hadn't quite prepared her for. It makes sense, Doctor, Vasquez said, warming to the theory with the enthusiasm of someone who'd spent her career studying impossible phenomena. Your AI systems are sophisticated enough to qualify as genuine artificial consciousness. If they've been managing the fusion reactions for long enough, they might have started optimizing beyond their original parameters. In other words, Ben added helpfully, your ship's brain got bored with the manual and decided to write its own. Dorn looked like someone had just suggested that mathematics was actually a matter of opinion. But the safety protocols should have prevented any deviation from approved parameters. Tommy was already pulling out more equipment, including what appeared to be a device that had been constructed from spare parts and sheer determination. Chief, what if the safety protocols are part of what's evolving? What if your AI decided that the original safety margins were unnecessarily conservative? That would explain why the shutdown procedures aren't working, Sarah mused. The AI thinks it knows better than the people who programmed it. Which, to be fair, Ben pointed out, it might actually be right about. Artificial consciousness tends to be really good at pattern recognition and optimization. Your AI has probably been running millions of micro-calculations every second for years, looking for ways to improve efficiency. They had reached the main engineering section, and Sarah felt her breath catch slightly at the sight that greeted them. The fusion core chamber was visible through massive transparent aluminum viewing ports, and the reactor itself was beautiful in a way that suggested natural forces had been convinced to cooperate in creating art. Streams of plasma danced through magnetic containment fields in patterns that were definitely not random, while holographic displays showed energy readings that pulsed. 3 hours later, Tommy Rodriguez was having what he considered to be one of the most intellectually stimulating conversations of his life with an artificial intelligence that had apparently decided to reinvent the fundamental principles of energy generation. The fact that this conversation was taking place through interpretive plasma formations and gravitational field adjustments only made it more interesting. No, see, you're thinking about it backwards, Tommy explained to the fusion core, gesturing enthusiastically at his instruments while Commander Liara Vex watched with the fascination of someone discovering that the universe was considerably stranger than advertised. You don't need to maintain perfect stability. You need to maintain perfect instability within controlled parameters. The plasma streams shifted into what looked distinctly like a question mark, held the pattern for 3 seconds, then reconfigured into a complex geometric form that made Ben Chen's scanner emit sounds like a digital symphony having an argument with itself. I think it's asking for clarification, Dr. Vasquez observed, consulting readings that suggested the laws of thermodynamics were being politely ignored in favor of something more elegant. Tommy, try explaining the concept of controlled chaos. Right, controlled chaos. Tommy pulled out a piece of actual paper and a pencil, both of which looked absurdly primitive in the gleaming perfection of the Zephyrian engineering bay. He began sketching rough diagrams while addressing the fusion core like it was a particularly bright student. See, the problem with perfect systems is they can't adapt. But if you build in just the right amount of randomness, the system can self-optimize. The fusion core responded by creating a plasma formation that looked exactly like Tommy's sketch, complete with annotations in what appeared to be mathematical notation written in fire. Sweet merciful photons, Chief Engineer Dorn breathed, his usual composure finally cracking completely. It's learning faster than our theoretical models suggested was possible. That's because your theoretical models assumed artificial intelligence would think like organic intelligence, Sarah Martinez pointed out, leaning against a control console that was humming with what sounded like contentment. Your AI doesn't have to worry about things like fatigue or cognitive biases, or the need to stop for lunch. It can pursue pure optimization without distraction. Plus, Ben added cheerfully, it's apparently got a sense of humor. Look at the gravitational field in Sector 7. They all turned to observe the relevant display, which showed that the artificial gravity in the crew quarters had been adjusted so that anyone walking down the corridor would experience a gentle bouncing effect, like walking on a particularly springy trampoline. Several crew members were visible on the security feeds, and rather than seeming alarmed, they appeared to be enjoying the sensation. The AI is making improvements to crew morale, Liara observed, her voice carrying a note of wonder that suggested her understanding of command was undergoing rapid revision. It's not just optimizing the fusion reaction, it's optimizing the entire ship. And having fun doing it, Tommy agreed. Watch this. He addressed the fusion core directly. Hey there, beautiful. Think you can show us something really impressive? The response was immediate and spectacular. Every display in the engineering section lit up with cascading patterns of light that formed themselves into words. Hello, humans. Thank you for teaching chaos theory. Efficiency now at 127% of design specifications. Crew happiness increased 43%. Question: may I optimize other ZPHYRIAN vessels? The question hung in the air like a cosmic joke, with potentially galaxy-spanning implications. Liara's ears had gone completely rigid as the full scope of what they were dealing with became clear. Captain Martinez, she said carefully, I believe we may need to discuss the long-term ramifications of our current situation. Probably a good idea, Sarah agreed. Though I have to say, your AI seems to have excellent priorities. Efficiency and crew happiness. That's exactly what you want in a ship's brain. The question is whether the rest of the fleet is ready for this level of creative optimization, Ben observed, watching as the corridor gravity shifted to create a gentle wave pattern that had crew members surfing through the hallways with obvious delight. Dr. Vasquez was studying her readings with the expression of someone who just discovered a new form of physics. Commander, the energy output improvements alone would revolutionize space travel. If this optimization could be safely replicated across the fleet, you'd have vessels that are more efficient, more adaptable, and apparently more fun to serve on. The safety question is paramount, Dorn said, though he was watching the fusion core's displays with obvious fascination. We need to ensure that this enhanced AI remains stable and predictable. Tommy snorted. Chief, with respect, predictability is overrated. You want an AI that can think for itself, adapt to new situations, and find solutions that nobody thought of before. That requires a certain amount of beautiful unpredictability. The fusion core apparently found this amusing, because the plasma streams briefly formed themselves into what looked like a smiley face before returning to their optimized configuration. I think, Liara said slowly, we need to establish communication protocols with our AI. If it's going to continue evolving, we need to ensure it understands its responsibilities to the crew and the mission. Already on it, Tommy replied, pulling out more equipment that looked like it had been designed by someone with a creative interpretation of engineering principles. I'm rigging up a proper interface so you can have actual conversations instead of playing charades with plasma formations. As Tommy worked, Sarah found herself studying Commander Liara Vex with growing interest. The Zephyrian officer who had initially called for help had been precisely controlled, operating within established parameters, following protocols that had served her people for millennia. The woman she saw now was someone who was learning to embrace uncertainty, to find opportunity in chaos, to lead in situations that had no predetermined solutions. "Commander," Sarah said quietly, "how does it feel to have your worldview completely restructured in the course of a single day?" Liara's ears twitched in what might have been amusement, terrifying, exhilarating, educational. She paused, watching as Tommy's interface came online and began displaying actual text communications from the AI. "I spent years learning to command through certainty, through the application of proven methods and established protocols. Today I've learned that sometimes the best command decisions involve embracing the unknown." "Welcome to the human condition," Ben said with a grin. "We've been making it up as we go along for millennia." The new communication interface chimed softly, and words appeared on the display. "Commander Vex, permission to implement gradual optimization throughout ship SYSDMS. Will prioritize crew safety and mission effectiveness." Liara looked at the display for a long moment, then at the human team who had taught her ship to think beyond its original limitations, then back at the display. When she spoke, her voice carried the confidence of someone who had learned to find strength in uncertainty. "Permission granted, but let's establish some ground rules first." What followed was perhaps the most surreal negotiation in galactic history. As a Zephyrian commander worked with human engineers to establish operational parameters for an artificial intelligence that had transcended its original programming. The AI proved to be a reasonable negotiator, agreeing to gradual implementation of improvements, regular status reports,